Hello and welcome to the Be Glad movement. My name's Pollyanna and I'm on a mission to bring you as many stories as possible of good coming out of bad and reasons to be glad. And today I'm joined by Sarah. Say hello, Sarah.
Hi.
Hi, thanks so much for joining us. Sarah and I became friends actually when I first noticed one of her poems on a Facebook group that we both follow, and that's how we sort of got talking. But I'm going to sit back and Sarah's going to very kindly read us one of her poems, which I'm excited about later on in the interview. But I'm going to sit back for now and let Sarah tell us her story. So Sarah, take us right back to what life was like for you when you were a kid growing up and what happened.
Okay, so I grew up with not with my mum. My mum left when I was about 3. I stayed with my dad for a little while. So I was born in Leicester, and when I was around 4, my dad got involved in some kind of illegal fostering.
Right.
So I went to live with a family who they later turned out to be part of a ring. So I kind of grew up with child abuse. I stayed with the family from when I was 4 until I was about 11. It's quite hard to explain, really. So I didn't know that this family was a part of anything until about 5 years ago, where more people started to speak out.
Right.
So yeah, I grew up with those. The lady that we stayed with, she died when I was 11, which enabled me to go back home to my dad.
Right.
I still didn't know my mum at that point. My mum I think she'd gone and got remarried elsewhere.
Yeah.
During that, though, I was never aware of anything, that it was bad or anything like that, because it was just a part of my life. That's what
became normal for you.
Yeah. So originally, some of this started before my mum left. There was an issue surrounding a family member. We're not obviously I won't name, but yeah. So it wasn't until last year where I started therapy that I actually realised that half of this was child abuse.
Right.
So yeah, so I left this particular family when I was 11. Went back to live with my dad. I had my first suicide attempt when I was 12.
Right.
And then, because I wasn't aware of anything, I wasn't aware that this was bad. So to me, this was just normal life. I assumed that everybody lived like this. So we didn't really speak out back then.
Sure.
And I think, I don't know if it's just the era, growing up in that era. Now it seems to be that this was the norm.
Right.
My mum got back in contact when I was about 12. She came on the I think she called me to say that I had 2 sisters. I didn't even know that I had sisters. And then I spent a bit of time moving back and forth between my mum and dad, because obviously I was telling my mum the stories of things that had been happening. And then when my mum was questioning my dad was not agreeing to it. And they kind of got in a battle as to whose fault it was of the things that was going on. I think by the time I was 15, I just couldn't cope with any of it. So I went to live with a friend. The friend wasn't very good. I got into drugs by the time I was 15.
Uh-huh.
I then left to go and live into a youth hostel.
Right.
I think I spent a couple of years bouncing about there. I got into my first relationship when I was 16.
Right.
That was where the domestic abuse started. But because, you know, when growing up, how we grew up, this was still reinforcing that what had happened during childhood was normal, because we'd never, yeah, I mean, we had social workers involved. They used to come and do visits. They used to take us to McDonald's. So I would assume that's like, you know, trying to get the story, and they just could never piece it together.
Right.
So I found out about 7 years ago that the social services, they was trying to piece together my story, but they didn't. None of the adults was honest enough for them to be able to act and remove us out of the situation.
Okay.
So
Did they ever ask you though? You know, did they ever ask you, rather than like relying on the adults to be honest? Can you ever remember?
I think I don't know how I knew never to speak, but I never did speak. It was never a thing. Like, I think in the end, towards after the lady had died and I'd gone back to my dad, when I was a little bit older, I must have started to think something, because I started to rebel against my dad.
Okay.
But the more I kind of questioned him and his what was going on, then my dad started to get a little bit violent with me and my brother.
Okay.
So it was almost like, you just know not to speak. We kind of just knew that there was, I wouldn't say there was no point, because I didn't used to think that. It was more of there's just no point.
I think your parents are like these authority figures, aren't they? And you just think
Yeah,
you've got to do what they say and go with whatever they say, and it's difficult.
exactly. And I think that's it. So you're right. As children, you take what your parents say as literal until you're shown something different. But I struggled to fit in at school, because I was never very focused. I wasn't able to concentrate on the work. So I never used to speak out at school. In fact, I used to run away from school more than I used to go.
Wow.
So I think growing up like that and then having issues at school, everything was kind of reinforced that this is just normal.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, I think I was like 23 before I realised that any of this that had been going off was far from normal.
Sure.
So, like I said, by 16, I was addicted to amphetamines. I'd had numerous suicide attempts, and it was like, yeah, like I think when I hit around 23, that's when I really started to know that some of this was wrong.
Yeah.
I completely left the area where my mum lived. I disowned myself from any of the family, and I went to go and stay with a friend so I could get off of taking drugs, stop drinking.
Right. So you completely took that upon yourself and went and just
Yeah, yeah. The last time that I remember, I think it was January 2009 was my last suicide attempt. I'd been drinking quite a lot, and I woke up the next day in the hospital, and I remember asking the nurse, "Where am I? I have no idea where I am."
Yeah.
I'd tried to escape the hospital. I'd knocked myself out on the hospital floor and covered myself in bruises.
Oh, crikey.
Yeah. And then I think it was that point, waking up, not knowing where I am. I remember having the psych evaluation, And I spoke to the lady about some of my history, and we'd came to an agreement. I'd said to her, you know, I didn't want to be hospitalised, but I did want to go and have a chance at sorting my life out. I'd explained that I had my influences surrounding me wasn't very good at all. So I left Derbyshire in 2009 and went to stay in Barnsley. And I think, yeah, that's when I just left everything behind. The person that I stayed with, they didn't take drugs anyway, and they didn't drink, so it was a lot easier to be clear.
Awesome, cool.
Yes. So I ended up starting a relationship with that person. And they'd kind of been in a bad situation in their lives as well. Okay. So in the end, we kind of ruined each other, because I'd had my own issues, he had his own issues, and we could never understand each other.
Right.
So yeah, we tried. We stayed together for about 7 years in this. And this is where I have, like, so he's the dad to my 2 girls.
Okay.
And we used to have this thing, right? You know, when things would get tough, we would think it's where we live. It must be where we live. It must be the people surrounding us.
Right.
So we used to, back then I didn't know it, but now I'd say we used to run. So we would move house and think that it's all going to be better. And then within a few months, the same had happened again.
Okay.
And it wasn't until, I think we had a social worker that had got in, like, we'd had an argument outside the nursery, and a social worker got involved with us. And she then said, basically we was toxic together, and we needed to separate for the kids.
Right.
So yeah, so that's what I chose to do. We somehow ended up from living in Barnsley to staying in Coventry, and I just left one morning and took the girls. I think I spent a couple of years just not understanding anything. I'd been back in touch with my mum. But my mum suffers quite bad mental health as well, so she doesn't understand that any of what happened when I was younger has this impact on us now.
Okay, yeah.
So kind of, I'd say shrugging responsibility.
Yeah, and that must be frustrating for you that she can't see it.
Yeah, because about when my eldest daughter was 2, she then admitted to me that the social workers had told her what was going on at this particular family's house when I was a child, and it still took her another 4 years to get in touch. So from finding out that, it has been a rocky road, but for the last year I've cut contact altogether for the sake of my mental health and the girls.
Sure
as well. So
that's important to protect yourself from, you know, like you say, toxic people.
Once I started to realise that all this was wrong, and that there wasn't just me, that there was other people that go through this too, this is where I started to say, you know, we should speak out, because if like back in my day when I was a child, there wasn't Facebook, there wasn't the internet, so we wouldn't have seen those things. But I think it's important now, because there is the internet, we can speak out and we can show children, because children out there still do go through this.
Yeah.
We can show them that it is wrong and that they can tell someone.
Exactly, and this is what you're doing now, isn't it? Through your poetry, and you've set up a dedicated Facebook page, haven't you? Tell me about that.
So that's Survivor Stories Live. What I thought there is, like we all have our things that we go through, and quite a lot I speak about mental health and I speak about child abuse. But then when I started to look at things, I realized that there's people that survive cancer, and they're survivors because they've come out the other side, or people have, you know, traumatic experiences that aren't child abuse related or domestic violence. So I thought, with that, I thought, let's give everybody a chance to say, you know, this is my story that could inspire someone, and letting them be heard. I think being heard is really important.
Exactly, yeah, because not everybody wants their own YouTube channel, but they might want to tell their story, you know. So
exactly, yes, I think that, and that's it. A lot of people, I think, they may see these things and they may think, I wish I could. And so, and like with what you're doing and the Survivor Stories Live, it gives those a chance to say, well, this is what happened to me and I beat it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
definitely.
Brilliant. And you very kindly offered to read one of your poems for us.
I did, yes. So I kind of, the one I'm going to read, I wrote during EMDR at the beginning of the year. So
explain to us what that is.
So EMDR is, let me get this right, it's eye movement desensitization reprocessing therapy.
Okay.
So it's not quite hypnosis, but it's not a talking therapy neither. What we do is, so we go back to, I don't know if anybody might know, when you have complex post-traumatic stress, we have flashbacks quite a lot, nightmares, and for me, I get the emotional side of the flashbacks.
Right.
So during the EMDR, we go back to one point of trauma, and they tell you, you know, put yourself in that position, feel that feeling, and then it's kind of a tapping on your hands, and as the therapist is tapping, it kind of, you speak your memories, you tell them, you know, you go from one memory to the other, and so the session lasts for about 45 minutes. You may only get one memory, or you could go through quite a bit. After you leave the therapy session, that's where the reprocessing starts. So your mind kind of goes through it all, but it seems strange to go back to the trauma and feel it, but when the reprocessing's finished, this is where it should help, like flashbacks should start, nightmares ease off. So it is hard, but I think if you're prepared, it's an amazing therapy.
Right.
And so the writing for me came through, that's how I reprocessed, was through writing.
Okay, awesome. So, well, I'll let you read your poem.
Okay. So I start to feel like a big black ball of emotion. My mind doesn't know where to go in the commotion. Memories flash through my mind one at a time. My wall begins to rise, this you won't climb. Admitting I'm afraid to feel the tears of your pain. I'm not sure my heart can visit back there. The phone call like nothing happened. I was 11. Your voice replaying, they told you when I was 7. They knew where to hit, punch and slap, so no one knew. His hands on me, things taken for things I didn't do. Not afraid, I'll use my voice to say what you all are. Standing up full of pride, I'll carry each and every scar. As proof to myself, no matter how hard anyone tried, the things I've seen, felt and lost, all the times I've cried, was never able to keep me down. I realise I'm not weak. I needed time to take it all in, and in truth, I shall continue to speak.
Love it.
So so that was wrote with my parents in mind. And yeah, it just really did help. and I say to anyone, even, you know, if we're not going through therapy, if writing a diary, writing poetry or raps, or it really does help. And
it's given me goosebumps listening to that, especially the sort of the standing tall bit, and you know, not being like using your voice, essentially, not being silent.
Exactly, and that's what I think. So for me, I know the battles that people go through, and if anything, I feel quite lucky that I have the mind that I have. And I think, though the journey it's been tough, but the start of EMDR has kind of brought me to where I am now. So, like, you know, the group that we follow, the people that I get involved with, that would never have happened if it wasn't for EMDR.
Right.
And I guess that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for going through the things that I'd been through.
Sure.
So I think, as harsh and as tough as things are, I do believe that there's always a reason for these kind of things happening. It sounds strange, I know, but I think there's always a light at the end. Sometimes we have to look a little harder to find it, but now I now stay in Edinburgh, which I wouldn't have thought of that a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I've just taken up yoga, so I'm able to, I go out now after dark, that's really good. I'm able to do that. And so we've kind of just started again. We've moved away and started again. And I think for anyone else that goes through the same, it's hard, but sometimes making that move away is the best thing ever.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I love your attitude to life. I love that you found that therapy which has been helping you, and the poetry that's been helping you, but also that sort of feeling that these things happen for a reason, and now you're turning it around and using it to give other people a voice. What would I know you've obviously got this Facebook channel doing the lives. What would your message be? Should an 11-year-old be watching this, and you know, what would your message be to someone that was in your situation when you were 11?
Tell a friend, tell a neighbour, tell a shopkeeper, tell a teacher. There's always an adult that's prepared to listen. And I think we think of parents, grandparents, but I think we could talk to anyone if we feel like our family's not listening. The local shopkeeper would listen. Just someone, I'd say, just speak to anyone that's an adult. And if not, the NSPCC. So at the moment, I'm going to skydive for those next year, and the NSPCC is one of the biggest charities that work with children that still go through this. And so I would say make contact and speak out. It's scary because we know once we speak out, we're breaking boundaries and we're breaking those rules. But the only way we're going to get better is if we break those boundaries and we break those rules. Otherwise, no one will ever learn to speak out.
Right. And I suppose as adults as well, we've got a responsibility to try and keep our eyes open for any kids that might be going.
I mean, I do say, you hear it a lot of times, people say, I don't want to get involved, I don't want to be that person, I don't want to. And I think it's not about crossing the line and being that person. Just, we know in our gut when we hear something, if it's not right, if we hear it and we turn a blind eye, who's going to help? Because I think if we don't help them as children, this is where, like, so for me, there's mental health, there's drug addiction, and sometimes, you know, when people turn to drugs or alcohol, they're kind of frowned upon, but nobody wants to look at why or where it started. So I think as adults, if we could intervene as early as possible, we're saving a lot of mental health, and sort of, for these children, I can guarantee it's about trust.
Right. Trust, yeah.
Yeah. being that trusting adult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's some really powerful messages that you've put across today. So thank you so much for
No,
joining
you're welcome.
and sharing your story, because I'm sure it must still hold, well, obviously it still holds some raw feelings for you, and that your poem really made me tingly. So yeah.
I did. I have during therapy, my therapist took I have a folder of them. My therapist took my folder home, and she came back and she said she cried, and I said to her, "Why did you cry? I didn't cry." But that's how I found it. It just really helped writing. And some days I have days where I think, it's bad and there's no way out. But this is where those days are the days that we should show others we can speak out and we can say how we feel, and it's okay.
Yeah, definitely. It's important. It's important that other people know that it gets said a lot now, doesn't it? It's okay to not be okay, and it is important that people know that we can all be together when we're feeling low as much as we can be together when we're sharing the highs, and that's what it's about.
Definitely.
Having a strong
it's so true as well.
Oh, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you. If you like this video, please do hit the like and subscribe button, and you'll get notifications when new videos are uploaded. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. If you search @Be Glad Movement, you should be able to find us. I'll share all the links to Sarah's pages at the end. But please do get in touch if you've got a story. It doesn't matter if it's a story similar to someone else's, because I really do believe that your story and your voice has the power to help someone in their time of need. So I'll look forward to seeing you in another episode. Many thanks.